Hey, everybody, welcome to a Moment of Clarity. Thanks for being here. Please take a second to share it, let people know, click subscribe, click thumbs up, all that good stuff. But today we're going to get into Israel. I don't know if you heard, there's a little something going on there. It's normally such a peaceful place. I don't really understand why something's happening there. I have an amazing guest, by the way, Ariel Gold, who is co-director of Code Pink. I'm sure all of you know Code Pink, incredible anti-war group that has done so much good over the years. Before I bring her on, I wanted to show you a quick tweet. This is by Andrew Yang. Many of you remember he ran for president as the Democratic nominee. So his tweet was, "I'm standing with the people of Israel who are coming under bombardment attacks and condemn the Hamas terrorists. The people of New York City will always stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel who face down terrorism and persevere." And I responded to that, "I'm standing with the people who have been trapped in an open-air prison all their lives, get 4 hours of electricity a day, and can't even leave for emergency medical procedures. Ask yourself who you really are, Yang." So, yeah, not a huge fan of Andrew Yang. He had his issues before, but now he has just become royally shit on Israel. He's really amped it up because he realized he needs those voters to win mayor of New York, which is a cynical, pathetic political grab. But anyway, let's get to our amazing guest, the co-director of Code Pink, Ariel Gold. Hello.
Thanks so much for having me on. I am equally a non-fan of Andrew Yang.
Yeah, I would think so. He had issues before, but it's gone. He's gone to the moon on this crap recently.
Well, I just want to begin by saying that Andrew Yang is quite wrong because there is a rally going on tonight in New York City at the Israeli embassy calling on them to stop their bombardment, their assault, their vicious attack and war crimes in Gaza.
So yeah, let's give people a tutorial because I can't even claim to know that much. I mean, I know enough about Palestine and about Israel's bombardment, and I covered the Great March of Return a lot and how they would shoot and kill every type of unarmed person at the border there. Press, medics, elderly, children. But this is something different, although it's in a continuation of something that's been going on a long time, right?
Well, I actually want to back us up and start a few weeks back because a lot of people are tuning into this and saying, "Oh my God, Hamas just started firing rockets at Israel. Right. This is horrifying. What would you do if rockets were fired at you?" But this actually started a few weeks ago, so I want to give that background. Okay. So a few weeks ago, as Muslims began to observe the holy month of Ramadan, Israel okayed a number of home evictions, of ethnic cleansing in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah in order to let settlers come in and take over properties from the indigenous Palestinian population. Then Israel put up barricades outside Damascus Gate, the main gate that Palestinian Muslims enter through to get to the old holy city, and that is so important to them during the month of Ramadan. Then Israel allowed Kahanists. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what Kahanism is, it's the equivalent of the Jewish KKK. It is so right-wing, so extremist, so racist that they were banned at one point from Israeli Knesset and were listed by the U.S. State Department as a terrorist organization. So Israel allowed a Death to Arabs Kahanist march through Jerusalem. Then Israel shot at, with tear gas, stun grenades, and skunk water, a chemical foul-smelling water that stays on you for days, at the Palestinians who tried to protest the Kahanist Jewish KKK march. As though that wasn't enough, they went on to continue these evictions in Sheikh Jarrah and to attack the Palestinian youth who tried to peacefully prevent their families from being forcefully removed from their homes. That wasn't enough for them. So during the holiest night of the year for Muslims, when Muslims go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Israel barged into the mosque to fire tear gas and stun grenades inside the mosque.
Yeah, there's shocking
not going so well.
There's shocking video that's been going viral on Twitter of flashbang grenades going off inside a mosque. I mean, one of the holiest mosques. It's crazy.
On the holiest night of the year, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is actually the holiest mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. Then it gets worse. So planned 2 days later for that was Jerusalem Day. This is a day where Israel celebrates the theft of East Jerusalem from the Palestinians in 1967. And what happens on this day traditionally is that the Israeli right-wing Kahanist extremists march through Jerusalem with their Israeli flags. It's called the Flag March, and they march through Damascus Gate and invade the Al-Aqsa compound with the support and protection of Israeli police. So this is what was going on in the background. Now, what happened in the midst of this is that there started to be enough outrage worldwide about what was happening, that Israel was not allowing freedom of worship, that Israel was firing on Palestinian worshipers inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And there was a lot of pushback and a lot of Palestinian protest, most of it peaceful. Israel kind of realized that they had let the genie out of the bottle a bit too much. You know, you had statements coming from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, from Jamal Bowman, saying, you cannot evict these families from Sheikh Jarrah. So Israel actually, temporarily only, but they did pull back and put a temporary halt on the Sheikh Jarrah protests. And they realized that they had created this tinder keg. And so they said, all right, the right-wing Kahanist fascists cannot march through Damascus Gate and cannot actually go to the Al-Aqsa compound this time. And then the march got canceled. So it actually was quite a large win in some ways. And I have to say, I am not a fan of Hamas's decision at that point. So Hamas made a decision at that point to fire rockets at Jerusalem.
To those who don't really follow this stuff, can you explain what Hamas is? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just a terrorist group that tries to kill civilians.
Hamas is actually the legitimate government in Gaza. Like I said, I am no fan of Hamas, but they are the legitimate elected government inside of Gaza. Gaza is an open-air prison. It has been an open-air prison for the past 14 years. It is under siege by land, sea, and air, by Israel as well as Egypt. And as you said, they get only 4 hours of electricity a day. This is a place where youth unemployment is over 50%, where safe drinking water is difficult to obtain. This is a very difficult situation. This also comes in the context of the Palestinian elections that were supposed to take place. And it comes in the context of the Palestinian Authority, who really is a subcontractor of the Israeli government, and Hamas as rivals. Now, this election got canceled because Abbas in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, really didn't want to give himself an opportunity to lose. But this rivalry continues. And as not enough was done by the Palestinian Authority to protect Al-Aqsa Mosque and the worshippers, Hamas did step in at this point and said, if Israel does not remove all of its forces from the Al-Aqsa compound, we are going to start firing on Jerusalem. Now, this is an unrealistic ultimatum, given who Israel is. They're certainly not going to pull back their military. They love their military.
That we fund and arm. And so sure enough, Hamas did fire rockets onto Jerusalem. They didn't land in Jerusalem. Nobody was injured. Nothing occurred from that. And Israel could have said, all right, let's give another win. Let's just sit this one out and let tension simmer. Let's not respond for once. But Israel did not. And since then, we have another really all-out war
between Israel and Gaza. We have rockets coming out of Gaza to cities on the Israel-Gaza border. We have rockets headed towards Tel Aviv. And we have bombs and more bombs going off in Gaza. So if there is one thing that Israel does not do, it is allow this to take place and then let it go as they should have. And
it's over 30 people have died now is what they're saying.
We can't talk about the Israel-Gaza war that's taking place right now. The missiles coming out of Gaza and the bombs coming from Israel in a way of equality, because it isn't. Because this is occupier and occupied. Because this is a U.S.-funded, U.S.-supported, first-rate military. This is a military with enormous ability for precision strikes, for needle point strikes. They can do what they want. Whereas Hamas is kind of a ragtag militant. It is the legitimate government there, but these are not equal forces.
And the things that usually get fired, over the border are like improvised explosive devices. They're not. Well, this is not a professional military.
Missiles, but when Hamas says, as they've just said a moment ago, we're going to target Tel Aviv. They mean they're going to try to target Tel Aviv, and they might get a rocket near Tel Aviv. And in fact, one did hit the suburbs, and an Israeli was killed today. But they do not have precise targeting. Right. They do not have anywhere near precise targeting, whereas Israel does, and Israel can control where it targets. So Israel has controlled where they've targeted. They today hit a 13-story residential building and watched it collapse to the ground. And they have promised tonight to hit more high-rise residential buildings in Gaza. Already 10 children in Gaza have been killed. Like you said, over 30 altogether, and that's compared to 3 Israelis. And there is no end in sight for this. No end in sight. Because this also comes on the against the backdrop of Israel's elections and fights for power, where Netanyahu is trying to stay in power, and supposed centrists and some who are far to the right of Netanyahu and so on were about to take power. And now it's all up for grabs again. And if there's one thing that we know about Netanyahu, it's that if he's about to lose power, he is not going to lose a war. And so what we're expecting
he uses the war
level Gaza.
Yeah, he uses war and killing as a way to get votes usually.
Absolutely. And this is his opportunity to flex his muscles, to show that he will level Gaza, to show that, I've actually been watching Israeli TV today, maybe because I'm kind of a glutton.
A masochist, yeah.
Kind of a masochist.
Yeah.
But as I've been watching Israeli TV today, they have continued to say, Hamas is winning and Israel can't let that happen.
Winning, right.
Hamas is winning. So again, we have 3 Israelis compared to it's probably possibly over 30 now. Palestinians in Gaza, including 10 children. But Israel is winning. And that's because in the Israeli mindset, one Jewish life is worth maybe a few hundred or a few thousand Palestinian lives. So when Israel says we have to win, that is an enormous death toll. That's a massacre. And there is no other way to describe intentionally hitting residential buildings than a war crime. And that's what it is.
And much of Gaza, kind of always looks like the center of a war zone because it has been so bombed and obliterated, and then they're not allowed to have the supplies or get the supplies in to rebuild things. So it's kind of just permanently destroyed in a lot of ways. And you mentioned the incredible difficulty getting clean water. They have 4 hours electricity a day often. I remember from Abby Martin's documentary that whereas it used to be 10 or 15 years ago that a Gazan who needed emergency medical care could get, a pass to go to better hospitals and in Israel and get treatment. Now it's like 90% of those with breast cancer can't get out of Gaza to go get it treated.
Gaza is the most densely populated place on earth. It's like trying to drop a precision bomb into Manhattan. And, when they say, like, Israel likes to say, well, before we bombed the 13-story residential building, don't worry, we dropped some flyers and we said you might want to evacuate. Sometimes they even do what they call a knock bombing, knock, knock. So they drop a little bomb as a knock, knock, hello, we're coming in. And you get about 10 minutes to run. And then they drop the big bomb and the building collapses. This is their idea of being soft and human. But, when we talk about Palestinians in Gaza, even getting these notifications, you should evacuate your home because it's about to be bombed, there's nowhere to go. Palestinians in Gaza are trapped inside. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. Unlike Israelis, who are spending their days right now in bomb shelters, Palestinians in Gaza don't have bomb shelters. They don't even have a sufficient supply of water or electricity.
Talk about the bullshit propaganda of human shields that we always hear about.
Yes, well, that's what Israel loves to say. Anytime you say to them, well, you shouldn't have hit that residential building. Why did you bomb that hospital? They say, well, we decided that Hamas must be storing missiles in there, and they put children there in the school. They put children in the school to use them as a human shield to say we couldn't bomb them and we need our self-defense. So we just went ahead and bombed them. And, this time they're being fairly transparent. They're barely even saying that. They're saying Benny Gantz, who's the defense minister, supposedly a centrist, he promised today to bomb Gaza a few decades back, which we might consider generous because in 2014, he promised and carried out to bomb Gaza into the Stone Age. So I'm not sure we're a few decades, if it's a few decades.
Yeah, that's nice of him.
That's the Stone Age.
That's progress. Only a few decades back. Yeah.
Only a few decades back. But so they're saying, Israel is saying, we're going to keep striking until we've won. We've killed X number of Palestinians compared to Israelis who had to shelter with their cat and be very sad. And B, until what they call deterrence, which is just meaning, an enormous death toll. We're looking at likely a very long massacre this time, an enormous number of dead in Gaza. And I expect tonight, because they often do this at night and because there were rockets fired at Tel Aviv, for an enormous massacre to take place in Gaza. I fully expect to wake up tomorrow to a horrific death toll of Palestinians.
Yeah, all of that is horrific. Do you see a little hint of hope in that there seems to be some shift in popular opinion? To see Andrew Yang getting dragged on Twitter for his comments, and the mainstream media is still largely putting forward pro-Israel propaganda, but it seems like people are starting to wake up to the reality of it, don't you think?
Well, I don't have much hope from the Biden administration.
They're
expressing deep concern and condemning the rockets from Hamas. And I keep wondering, did you not notice the bombing of children? Because if you could at least condemn both, we would appreciate it. Try to actually do a both side thing for once.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing, which is different, is that we haven't had a situation before where we have members of Congress who are speaking out for the Palestinian people, who are in solidarity. Ilhan Omar has been putting out incredible tweets that are clear and accurate about what's going on. Rashida Tlaib today was at a protest in Washington, D.C. outside of the State Department with a number of groups, including Code Pink. So we are seeing that. And what we know after 2014 is that Israel actually lost out after 2014 in terms of world opinion. People saw the viciousness, the heartlessness of killing Palestinian children indiscriminately and were horrified. And we certainly have to hope this time that that occurs a lot faster and gets Israel to stop its massacres before we go on for weeks and weeks as we did in 2014.
Is any of this connected to, you know, the shit Trump did with the not that Biden's any better, but the, you know, moving of the embassy and the Kushner's ridiculous quote unquote 2-state solution that never consulted Palestinians? Has any of that had a lasting impact?
I would say it has had a lasting impact. I recently wrote an article after the Death to Arabs march took place in Jerusalem, saying this didn't come out of nowhere, this Death to Arabs march. There has actually been a rise of right-wing extremism in Israel. Again, it's called Kahanism, after Mir Kahan, who was the founder of the Jewish Defense League in the West, if you know who they were, terrorist thugs, and inspired a number of massacres, including the notorious Ibrahim Mas massacre in Hebron. We've been seeing a real rise of Kahanism in Israel. And not only have we been seeing this rise of Kahanism, you know, people wearing signs, they're holding or wearing signs that say Mir Kahan was right, which is a suggestion to carry out horrific acts of violence against Palestinians. But we've seen Kahanis re-enter the legitimate government in Israel, the Knesset. They were welcomed in by Netanyahu. So we now have a minister in Knesset, part of Knesset, who is a Kahanist, who's inspired by Mir Kahan. And when the attempted evictions were taking place in Sheikh Jarrah, he was right there. And in fact, the Jerusalem mayor was next to him, hanging out, making jokes. Such jokes as, they shouldn't have just shot you in the ass. They should have shot you in the head, to a Palestinian, and such things like that. So we have seen this normalization of the most extreme, because average Israeli society is pretty extreme, violent, anti-Palestinian, racist, far right already. But we are also seeing a rise of the far, far, far extreme in Israel. These are the folks that yesterday, as a fire broke out on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, they think from the military stun grenades that they were cheering on the other side, on the Western Wall. So we do see and chanting death to Arabs and, you know, all of their horrific chants. So we are seeing this, and that was nurtured by Donald Trump. And since Trump left office, what we've seen from Israel is that they have in many ways been testing the waters. How far can we go? Right as Biden was, right before Biden got sworn in, they announced more settlement units had been approved. And so we've been watching this, and now they're really testing the waters. Now they are bombing high-rise residential buildings in Gaza to see, you know, how far is the U.S. going to let us take it? And so far, Biden is saying quite as far as you would like. You have all our support.
Right.
But we do have this momentum that's been building, not just in the U.S., but worldwide. And it's a great opportunity for us to take our elected officials to task, see if they have spoken out yet against what's going on. At the very least, they should be calling on both sides to reach a ceasefire. And so now's our moment to do that. And now is our moment to take to the streets. Folks can find a protest near them. We at Code Pink are listing the protests that are going on across the country and around the world. And you can go to codepink.org and look for a protest near you. And we really need to raise our voices right now.
And I'm sure you're concerned, as I am, with actual real anti-Semitism. But the irony is that the way anti-Semitism has been used recently, you know, by the politicians and the media in Britain to sideline and attack Jeremy Corbyn and against others like you and me, anyone who criticizes Israel, using it against people like us actually dilutes the term anti-Semitism so that it makes it harder to defend against the actual real anti-Semitism, like real hatred of Jews.
Well, what we saw during Donald Trump is we saw anti-Semitism also rise exponentially in a very terrifying way. And you're absolutely right. When we accuse Palestinian rights activists of anti-Semitism falsely, or even for mistakenly saying something without realizing the many, many tropes that there are, we dilute this very real issue. And what we really need to be looking at with anti-Semitism is that it's interconnected with all of these other isms like racism and anti-Arab hatred and so much more. And of course, what we're going to see, you know, out of Israel, we're already seeing, is that these are attacks because we're Jews. But these are not attacks because there are Jews in Israel. These are attacks because the Israeli government is committing apartheid, is committing actual apartheid, and right now is committing genocide as well. And the Palestinian people are tired of it and legitimately are calling for their rights and struggling and protesting for their rights. And when they protest, most of the time, what Israel, or pretty much I think all of the time, what Israel does is tear gases them, shoots rubber bullets at them, and often live bullets. And now we have the bombs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough. Is the best way for people to follow your work and the work of Code Pink to go to the Code Pink website? Or
codepink.org. You can also follow us on Twitter at Code Pink. And you can follow me on Twitter at Ariel, that's Ariel, Elise, Elyse, Gold, Gold.
Ariel, thank you so much. You're excellent on this topic, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yep. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got some info into your into the holes in your face. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. That was Ariel Gold, who is the co-director of Code Pink. I'm sure you all know Code Pink. Something else I was going to say is I mentioned Abby Martin's excellent documentary. She just announced that if you guys haven't seen it, she just announced that it's now free on YouTube. It's honestly the best documentary I've seen on the reality in Gaza, what's going on there, what it's like to be on the ground there. It is so wonderfully done. So please check it out. We have to, it's one of these things where Israel is a case where you have to stand up against apartheid, against oppression, against killing, against genocide. And it doesn't matter who's doing it. It doesn't matter if, America's friends with that country. America, the United States likes that country because they vote with them at the UN or whatever the fuck. Or we sell weapons to them. It doesn't matter who they are. You have to stand for the same fucking moral certitude, no matter who the people are. And, Andrew Yang and so many others, I've been, harping on him because he's been so horrific, but also because he, wrote that stupid tweet. But, there's so many others like Biden and so many others. But Andrew Yang, he's showing that some people are allowed to kill others, to create apartheid, to oppress others, to keep people in an open air prison their entire lives with little electricity, little clean water. By the way, half of everyone in Palestine is under 18, meaning they are bombing and attacking a nation of children, basically. Half of everyone is under 18. And anyway, there's just so many things that are so horrific about what Israel's doing. And, people will try and tell you that this is somehow anti-Semitic to attack the policies of a country like Israel, which is fucking bullshit. You should be able to attack the policies of any country if they're oppressing others and attacking others and killing others and genociding others. So I can't thank you guys enough for being here. And let's see if people donated, all those donations are going to those in need. If you are struggling and need a couple of bucks, email commoncensored@protonmail.com. We're not talking thousands of dollars. We're talking, if $80 is going to make a huge difference and allow you to feed your kids for a couple days, then email commoncensored@protonmail.com. You can also, if you're watching this later, so you're not in the live stream, you can still donate on Venmo. @Lee Camp is my name on Venmo. Also my name in the real worlds, not the just Lee Camp. So yeah, you can donate that way. I hope you checked out the latest Redacted tonight. If I can say so myself, it was a fucking killer episode. Okay. Seriously, folks, it was about how we can get rid of our crushing prison state, our insane, biggest in the world prison state. So check that out at leecamp.com. Leecamp.com has just been completely revamped, but I'm still working on tinkering with some things. So if it's not perfect, please excuse us. We're working on it. All right, guys, keep standing up for Gaza, for Palestine, and keep fighting.